Can you guys hear me? Let's hope so. Every little thing is gonna be. All right. Let's wait for some people to log on. How was your weekend? Mine was pretty chill up to now. Okay, let's see. Bueno, Manson. How is everybody? How are things? As you know, we're at the next episode of the Progress Podcast, and today I'm gonna reflect a little bit on, the last week. A lot happened in Parliament. It was a short but long week, if that makes sense. You know, a lot of things happened, but still not too many meetings were had. I think we had maybe two or three actual meetings, but still, many decisions were made. Let's see. Monday, Monday we started off. Well, we had the Minister of Education, Minister Gums. She was supposed to come to Parliament to discuss a landsverordening, hoger onderwijs. But Parliament, there seemed to have been some miscommunication. This meeting, I believe we started this trajectory for the law way back then, and I think that Parliament now has restarted the legislative process, and I don't think that that was the intention, or that should have been the intention, because the law was already in process. So I think they rescheduled that meeting for us to continue on where we left off. But before that meeting on that same Monday, we had to vote on the motion that MP Ardwell, brought forward back in the public debate for the budget. That's part of the rules of order. back then. I don't know if everybody remembers, but there was a vote in which the MP kind of wanted to instruct the government to start the process to have a referendum concerning independence. Some MPs, including myself, immediately sounded the alarm because this is against the law. And this became a whole discussion back then in a public debate for the budget. And to my personal legal opinion, I don't think that such a motion should even have been voted on in the budget because it was so off topic, and it kind of also is just against the constitution. So I think that at some point we need to also kind of filter out what we let move forward when it comes to the motions. But then, as the rules of order say, once a motion deadlocks, because then I think the vote was 7-7, so it didn't pass, but it wasn't denied. So according to the rules of order, within one of the next public meetings, you have to vote on the motion again. And although we did not have the meeting with the Minister of ECYS concerning the law for hoger onderwijs, this agenda point came forward, and we still had to vote on it. And this was a little bit interesting to see again, because of course it became a back and forth between the MPs. It became a matter of a difference of opinion. But by the end of the day, I think that what happened is they made an emotional discussion about it. They made it about independence, while the actual topic should have been about the referendum. A referendum is something that should be regulated by law, by laws for ordering. And as a young country, St. Martin, we have never done that. We haven't done it yet. And since we became a country, St. Martin, we kind of had the obligation to make a referendum law in case that we would want one in the future. That's exactly what our constitution says, I think, under Articles 90 something, I believe. I have to check. I want to check. So that's a good thing about the constitution and the laws. You can just Google them at any time, and you can find them. So yes, so our constitution speaks of a referendum, and it speaks about a task that is given to parliament. And that task is basically that if there is a referendum to come, we have to decide, or we have to take the helm on it. And I think that that's where kind of the miscommunication came about for the presenter of the motion, because the law is pretty clear on this. It needs to come from parliament, and that doesn't mean that you can just motion it and that becomes a decision. No, an actual decision has to be made, with parliament, after having discussions with parliament about it. That was not done at all. And I think that that's where we kind of like went wrong. Because if you look at the intention of the law, it's very simple. It basically says that op basis, op initiatief van de staten wordt overgegaan naar de referendum. And then it also gives you certain articles. I think that's Article 92 of the Constitution. But it also gives you in which cases we can ask for a referendum, because people, when they hear referendum, they think, oh, independence or not. Actually, you can pretty much present all national ordinances, to a referendum to get a sentiment of the public. We have, been victim of the misconception that when it comes to a referendum, we're only talking about the status of a country, whether or not you're going independent or you're going autonomous or whatever. And I think that that's where we kind of like miscommunicated, not only to ourselves but to the public. And I think that that's dangerous. If I'm being very blunt about it, the people expect us to know what the Constitution says. The people expect us to honor the Constitution. We are MPs put there by the Constitution. So for us to kind of like put our own authority in the back seat and kind of shift the buck towards government, I think that that's irresponsible from our side. I think that we should regulate what a referendum should be first, and not only in the cases of independence and whatnot, but also in all cases. For example, if we wanted to ask the public what would be their sentiment in regards to a certain law that needs to come, and then in that same law we would have to ask, okay, in this specific case, where it's about a law, who all do we let vote? Because the official voting age is 18, but when it comes to a referendum, for example, PFP for sure believes that um, students, or actually all young persons of the age of 16 and up, should be able to vote, because it's about your country, it's about your status. And those kind of things need to be regulated in a referendum law first before you even get to the point of, okay, let's see if there is a field to have a referendum for a topic such as independence. But forever since we became a country, we have put these responsibilities that the law gives to us as a government in the back seat, and we think that we can still execute the law the right way. But the law works in a way where you have to set up the LB the Landsbesluiten, the policies, everything else that is necessary to give the higher laws the body in order to actually be able to regulate things. So yeah, in that specific case, I still disagree with the sentiment of the presenter of the motion, and indeed it came to a vote again, and as expected, the vote deadlocked. And the second time that a vote deadlocks, it means that it is not passed, that it is rejected. So that motion is off the table. But that doesn't take away our responsibility as Parliament to take this discussion back up, because MP Gums was part of a committee back then with I think former MP, well, Minister Gums, sorry, former MP Gums was in a committee back then with former MP Angelique Lumou and former MP Solange Miller Duncan, and I think someone else was on the committee as well. And they were the ones who were supposed to kind of like bring forward the plan van aanpak to actually reach to this referendum law, and they did the work. They did the work, and I think this was part of the ad hoc committee for decolonization and constitutional affairs, and we just left it hanging. I mean, of course, we had politics last year, but now it's there to be picked up, and that's actually our job according to the Constitution. That's actually what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pick that back up and bring the law forward. And once we do that, then we can discuss the topics, the different topics, whether it's independence or anything else. We can bring it forward to the public, because that's a good thing. But you need to do it in the right way and responsibly. So that motion deadlocked, and it was rejected. And yeah, let's see if the MPs, are of the good intention and actually want to work within that ad hoc committee to actually reach to the point where we have enough regulations to say, okay, now we can responsibly ask the public what is their sentiment on whether or not we should go independent. I think that that's a good thing to ask the public, but you just need to do it the right way. Then, if I'm looking back at the schedule for the week, we go into Tuesday. And Tuesday we had a presentation. It was a committee of Rome meeting, and we had a presentation by the Nature Foundation. And it was nice to see Miss Leslie once again. And of course, I've worked with the Nature Foundation in my days in Vromi, and in my days as an opposition member. And the one thing that I can say when it comes to the presentations, well, not only the presentations, but for me, when I look at it from a Vromi perspective, there is not enough collaboration. Well, there was no collaboration back then. I remember when we came into Vromi back in May, we kind of had to work on repairing the relationship between the Nature Foundation and Vromi, because at a certain point they were just put in the back seat. And mainly probably because their advices when it comes to certain issuances of land or certain building permits was not positive. And that kind of like maybe put a strain on the relationship between the ministry back then and the foundation. I can honestly say that at the moment there was a good working relationship between the ministry and the foundation. And I think that what I got most out of that meeting with the Nature Foundation is that they need not only funding and not only manpower, but they kind of need a little bit of a mandate from government. Because if you look at the studies that they do, the follow up is lacking, to my opinion. And of course, St. Martin is small, and you do want to try to involve them in most cases, but by the end of the day, they don't even have the manpower for that. So how do you streamline a process within the building permits department, for example, in Vromi, where you have to decide in certain cases, all right, if a proposed project is of a certain size or bigger, then you should definitely ask the Nature Foundation for advice. And these These controversies happen when there is a little bit too much wiggle room when it comes to the minister's ability. And this was actually discussed on the day after, because on Wednesday we had a meeting with the minister of Romi, and this meeting was a public meeting, and it was concerning the status of the draft policy on the land issuance. So the DRAM arrest, and how we're going to move forward with land. And here is where it kind of like everything came like together, because we had the discussion. First of all, the minister came and the minister gave us a presentation, but he also spoke about the zoning plan, for the natural and coastal areas, for the hillsides, and for the water bodies. And I think that in the midst of it all, the minister also kind of, explained what the issue is with land issuance at the moment. The fact that we are blocked by, the DRAM verdict to actually issue any new parcels of land. And when the discussion came about with, my colleagues, that's where I was kind of surprised, because you could see that they don't understand it. They don't understand what the issue is, and they are trying to basically put the minister's actions in question rather than trying to understand what the actual issue is, because the DDAM's verdict's been there for a while, since 2022, and we just recently came in, and we have actually, decided that to take it slow. The Minister Gums, Patrice Gums, has not issued any new parcels of land since his tenure, as per the DDAM verdict. But then became the discussion, okay, but then a reissuance, is that allowed? We have also confirmed with several lawyers, including the notaries, that indeed, of course, it's allowed. A reissuance is not what the DDAM verdict was about at all. The DDAM verdict was actually about the selling of land, and it was in Holland. The only thing that the judge in St. Martin took from that is that without a policy in place, the issuance of land can be deemed unlawful. The decision itself, and that's what I think that we kind of missed here in St. Martin. But that's what it's about. So yeah, that discussion with the minister, I think, was healthy to have. But I think that now is the time to actually look at the issues and see how we can assist the ministry with this, because of course, we have, launch packet A7, country package E7, which we have been waiting on, and that is mostly to help the Department of Domain Affairs and the DRAM, that's right there by domain, to kind of assist the already understaffed department, structurally understaffed department. When you look at the amount, the influx of requests, and the output, and yeah, this kind of like puts, a strain not only on the department but also the minister, because people expect some results, but your hands are also tied. So I'm curious to see when, we can see that launch packet E7 start getting executed, so that we can actually get some movement on not only the DDAM policy, but also, everything else when it comes to land, the backlog. you know um if we look at what's happening right now at the Ministry of Romi, I think that in Beacon Hill, certain developments have been called into question. They are currently by the judge, and the judge has asked the minister to kind of give his explanation as to what the process was. And I think all of this is kind of like interlinked into some of the meetings that we had this week, especially the one with the Nature Foundation, because now comes the question of the minister now has to put on paper, which I think should have been done a long time ago. In which cases do you go to the Nature Foundation, and in which cases are you obligated to follow their advice, especially when it comes to the environmental side of things? Past ministers have shied away from this. Why? Very simple. If you have the Nature Foundation and your intention is to, approve whatever a developer wants to do, simply because they're investing, then that kind of like falls in the back seat if the Nature Foundation brings out an advice that says, well, actually, this project or this issuance or whatever can be deemed hurtful, or can cause damage to not only the environment, but, to the country as a whole. And once you have that advice, how do you move forward? And I think in the past, we have seen many cases that have come into question, including the one in Beacon Hill, where when you look back at the internal process, you could see that these specific steps, like going to the Nature Foundation, which is a third party, or sometimes even going to the policy department within Vromi, which is an internal party, um, we just decide to skip that. We skip that step, and we just suffice with a very short-sighted advice, and the minister kind of hides behind the fact that that advice is positive from the department head. But to my professional opinion, if you do not have a management agreement with your department head, then by the end of the day, regardless of whatever the decision is, you're still responsible personally as the minister. And I think that that's actually important for us to note, because that's where accountability falls in line. We are reacting a lot as a public to stuff that has been happening, but we are not looking at the root of the problem. Oh, that also brings me to another situation that we saw, that has been happening, um, down there in Simpson Bay. Like, I think around like the character site, we saw online that some residents kicked up because there was a sort of a fence put on what was perceived to be the beach, and a lot of panic. And but once you look at, first of all, how did they reach there? That's number one. It's good to have the facts in place, before we start to cry wolf. When you look at what's happening down there by next to character, where the beach, so-called beach, got fenced off, that is actually part of a made brief. um I don't know if everybody knows, but if you look at Simpson Bay, and if you look at the stretch, from the bridge going all the way down to Beacon Hill, you could see that um, people's parcels are pretty close to the water. If you look at the beginning of Simpson Bay, I think some people's walls are literally getting hit by the water, by the sea, and and in high tide you can't even come out. So it's pretty normal that the Maidbrieven back then, the residential Maidbrieven for people to live in Simpson Bay back then, they were at a certain wavelength that now we can see that through high tide, through erosion, through low tide, that sometimes it gets really close to the boundary and sometimes it stays away. Um, what was kind of the misconception when I saw that the fencing down there became an issue online, is that people thought that this was just the beach being fenced off, and this was actually just like everybody else, with a wall in the beginning of the Simpson Bay Road from the bridge coming all the way down. Everybody that has a wall at the back of the yard that then walks onto the beach, just like them, down there where the fence is, they have the exact same rights, because they are within the compounds of their maid brief. And because nothing has been built there for the last couple of years, people have started to believe that that was part of the sea, that was part of the beach, sorry, and that was part of the public beach, but that's not the case. That is a maid brief, and according to every maid brief, every residential maid brief, you're allowed to fence off the property that you have received in long lease, that you are paying canon for. And that's basically what happened down there. And we tend to sound the alarm every time, but sometimes I think transparency plays a big role. Being honest with the public and being forthcoming with the public goes a long way. And I think that the minister has been trying to do that, because it's not the first time that this situation came about. I remember that the minister and myself back then went down to the property to ensure that everything was in place, that they were indeed within their made belief, that everything that they were building was according to a building permit that was approved by a minister of Romi before Minister Patrice Gomes. And that's where I think that accountability once again comes into play. I think that if we disagree with the decision, we first need to look at the legality of it, and if there is nothing wrong with the legality of it, then we need to try to translate our personal opinion of it into finding out what the problem was. And I think that that's where we need to start if we have issues with, building permits that have been approved in the past that, to my opinion as well, have been questionable. I think we need to start looking at the internal advices, the internal building permit advices, to see if checks and balances were met, and if not, then I think that instead of trying to, because I've heard past ministers in the past allude to this, that they were just following advice from the department, but what you don't do is try to throw your department under the bus when you are the one responsible by law. It doesn't work like that. And I think that ministeriële verantwoordelijkheid, that's something that past ministers and current and future ministers would be good to keep in the back of their head, because it can come back. Personal liability is a thing, and you can be held accountable for your actions as minister, regardless if you're hiding behind an advice or not. By the end of the day, you are the one executing, and especially without a management agreement. So I encourage all ministers to make a management agreement with all of your diensthoofden according to the LEOL, so that you make sure that you're not only covered but your ministry is covered, and that everybody is in the same state of mind where messing up is not an option. We're here for the people, and that's the only reason we're here. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that little point forward, because I think that this weekend it's been a lot, and I've also been a little active on Facebook, trying to bring some objective information out there, so that people can rest assured that if there was any actual wrongdoing, the minister would have been on top of it for sure. you know then I'm looking at the meeting schedule for last week. We also had a meeting planned with the Minister of Teat. I think that was one concerning agriculture in St. Martin, but that one was also postponed. And then on Thursday, we were supposed to have a public meeting about the banks, in regards to the banking and the ability to get a current account. But that meeting was also postponed, and instead, we appointed certain chairpersons and vice chairpersons of certain committees, because, of course, when the change in government came about in November, um, former MP, now Minister Gomes, former MP Mr. Lina, now PM again, they all left Parliament, and when we, MP De Weaver, MP Labega, and MP Veronica Janssen Webster, and myself, swore in. So certain positions that were taken up by the four now ministers and MPs who left had to be filled. So that means that we had to vote again on certain chairpersons. So that was done. We still have a couple more committees to go. We're waiting on the return of MP Kutai to finish off some of these appointments. And yeah, I think that was the last meeting week that we had. Like I said, it was a long but short week. Where in my opinion, a lot did happen, but within a very short amount of time. I think it was about only 2 or 3 meetings that really meant something. Young people. I see a question. Hi, from the party. I wonder who it is. What would it take to create a mandate for Nature Foundation? Well, the thing is, the Nature Foundation is a stichting, so it's kind of hard through a national ordinance to really give them the mandate. But to my opinion, it has to happen internally in Vromi, because by the end of the day, of course, Nature Foundation, they also assist VSA. TEAT is also involved, but the crux of it, of what they do, the environmental part of it is Vromi. That the M in Vromi stands for milieu, and we need to, as a government, and specifically as a Ministry of Vromi, we need to give them teeth. What do I mean by this? You can make policy as a minister, and what do I mean by making policy? Like I said, the Nature Foundation gets requested to give advice on certain topics, but these topics are at the discretion of whichever department head wants to ask them for advice. Me being one of them back then, or whichever minister wants to inquire. But that process is where I think it needs to be objectified, meaning that in certain cases you cannot pick and choose. And that's what it's about. Once you have your policy in place as a minister, then if you want to deviate from your own policy, you would have to motivate it. And het motiveringsbeginsel is something that's very important in our law and something that needs to be taken into consideration every single time that a minister wants to deviate from a current policy, because that's actually a legal requirement. If he does not do that, then the decision can be nullified because the justification is not there. So to go against an advice for the department head, het motiveringsbeginsel, you have to now motivate, not only through your personal opinion, but professionally, why you disagree with the professionals within your ministry. So I think that per minister, you need to give these advisory bodies the teeth that they deserve, the teeth that you want them to have in regards to your ability to make decisions regarding your ministry. You see, to hold yourself accountable is something that has proven to be difficult in the past for many persons. But I think that we as PFP, we will try to embody that, for sure, and avoid situations like conflict of interest, for example, because those are some of the things that I think we need to be aware of, because it needs to stop. Somebody sent me an article this week on the Daily Herald, and there was an article about myself where I kind of urged the Vromi minister to clarify, a conflict of interest protocols. And I think that we need answers to these questions, not to point fingers, but to stop what has been happening and what we have shoved under the rug all of these years. In this specific case, I asked the not only the minister of Roman but also the prime minister, what is your opinion on the fact that a minister, in a case that was already proven to be a conflict of interest, decided to just mandate another minister to sign for him? And when you swear in as a council of ministers, and this is giving everybody a little bit of a political background. These discussions are usually not had, but when you're forming a government, a council of ministers, one of the discussions that is also had is who it's going to replace who when it comes to their absence or whatever. The vervangingsregeling. Why? Because that's also part of the official com. I think that's also a landsbesluit or part of it. Why? To avoid that there can be picking and choosing. So if officially for the minister of VSA, for example, the minister of finance is your plaatsvervanger when you're away, then the minister of VSA can just say, oh, well, you know what? I have a case of conflict of interest and the minister of finance does not want to sign for me. Therefore, I'm going to let the minister of Theat sign for me instead because it's a known case of conflict of interest. That doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And I sounded the alarm on this years ago when we were in opposition, but it never really like saw the light of day. And to my surprise, it came back on the front page of the Daily Herald again. And I think that we need some clarity. I think that in situations like that, the law is also a little bit clear. You can't you just mandate another minister. You would have to bring it to calm. I think that that's also what the prime minister confirmed, and also what the minister of Romi confirmed. So yeah, I just want that on black and white as well to see how we're going to move forward. Because what we do not want is the gray area being what's kind of like becoming the norm for not only the past ministers of Romi, but all current and future ones. So trying to avoid that, I think, should be part of how we want to shape, how we want to vision, the future for the ministry. Let me see. Any other questions? I believe for this week, we were not supposed to have any meetings because it's a preparation week, but I did see some convocations come in this week for, I think, some meetings on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yes, on Monday we have a closed door meeting with the CFT at 10:30 to discuss the finances for St. Martin. And on same Monday, I think at 1 p.m., we have a committee finance meeting. I think that's a presentation from the central bank. on the security features for the Caribbean Gilder, that is coming. So that's looking forward to that one. And on the same day, again, we have a CC, a Central Committee meeting at 3 o'clock. That's to approve the travel for the month of March 25 in connection with Parlatino meetings and the approval of the composition of delegation and provisions for the management. I mean, sorry, the members of parliament to participate in IPCO, participate in IPCO and tripartite. So those two travel approvals would have to come in a CC also on Monday. Um, yeah, I'll be there for the one for Palatino, but I'm not speaking. And yeah, I think we have IPCO, I think in June, mid June, I believe. I'm going this time. I think it's in Holland. We are also supposed to go to Saba, I believe, in April, if I'm not mistaken, for the SSS cooperative meeting in Saba. I think the meeting is on the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. So yeah, you got some stuff pending. So I'm looking forward to when the Minister of ECYS can come and continue with the trajectory that we already started for the Lands for Orde en Hoger Onderwijs. Let's get that law passed, guys. There's some critical updates that need to come, and the minister needs the law to do that. And yeah, I think that's about it. If there are any more questions? Anything on? Um, well, at the moment, I saw I saw that there was something about a local ambassador and some, a little bit of controversy again online. And I think that we need to also sometimes understand that certain decisions are made way back then, and in the course of continuity, after a while they come forward. I saw that some people criticize the Minister of Theat, Minister Grisha Martin, but I can honestly say that this is something that was already in the works, and I think if the minister comes out and explains what's happening, because I think at this point people think that we have an ambassador that is not from St. Martin to represent St. Martin, and that is not the case. Although I do believe that any type of ambassadorship or whatever that has to do with to represent St. Martin, we do need to involve our local influencers. That's something that we stand for. I think transparency is just key. I think that collaboration is always better than to fight. And I think that in this case, the minister did tell the coalition that she will, get us background information on this, and just provide the public with some clarity. And I think that that's what it's about. Giving the people the information that they need, and then let them decide for themselves. But if they don't have all of the information, that then you're going to leave some of it up for discussion, and that's going to create chaos. So let's be fair to the people, transparent, and so that we can avoid having to react. Let's be proactive instead. Bueno. All right, guys. Not gonna take too much more of your Sunday. It's Sunday fun day, so y'all be safe out there. If you're going to the beach, whatever you do today, everybody have fun and good vibes only. Bye, guys.